Novus Ordo Seclorum, The Intellectual Origins of the Constitution, by Forrest McDonald. Preface. Fashions in historical interpretation come and go. In 1958 I published a work called We the People, The Economic Origins of the Constitution, which was primarily concerned with testing Charles A. Beard's economic interpretation of the Constitution, then the prevailing version. Because the results of that test were essentially negative, I wrote in the preface that the purpose of my book was to clear the decks, and that I intended to follow the volume with two more, in which I shall attempt to write something meaningful about the making of the Constitution. My timing in publishing We the People was fortunate. Robert E. Brown and several other scholars were just then attacking Beard's thesis, and the mood of the historical profession was ripe for something new. The result was that Beard's book was all but unanimously pronounced defunct. My timing, 1965, in publishing the first of the two sequel volumes, E Pluribus Unum, was considerably less happy. That work focused upon the wheeling and dealing and the interplay between politics and economics, which enabled hard-nosed practical men to establish the Constitution. Several reviewers described it as neo-Beardian. That sort of analysis was no longer in season. Students of the Revolution and of the early national period, led by Bernard Bailyn and J.G.A. Pocock, had turned their attention to the role of ideology in the founding of the nation. During the remainder of the 60s and through most of the 70s, a host of works in the ideological vein appeared, and there emerged something of a consensus that neoclassical Republican ideology, traceable from Machiavelli to the 18th century English opposition, underlay the founding. I admire much of the work of the ideological school, but find it ultimately unsatisfying. It fails to distinguish among the several kinds of republicanism that were espoused by various Americans, which by and large reflected regionally different social and economic norms. Those ideological historians who have concentrated on the tradition of civic humanism have all but left the influential Scots thinkers out of account, and in their eagerness to downplay the influence of John Locke, once greatly overrated, they have neglected the importance of theories of natural law and natural rights. They have largely disregarded the law and legal institutions. In the whole corpus of the ideological literature, there is scarcely a mention of what used to be called social, political, and economic reality, or of such practical men of affairs as George Washington and Robert Morris, without whom, arguably, there might have been no founding. Finally, though the ideological historians have delineated the tensions between republican virtue and luxury vice, they have inadequately addressed the counterpart tensions between communitarian consensus and possessive individualism, and those between the...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?